Hello everyone, welcome back to alkaline hydroxide 784, and today we will cover what you can or should do during paper 2 in GP. If my voice gets hoarse at some point of time, please understand, because I was recording something just now for 1 hour, and yeah. Anyways, let's just start. Basically how I'll do it, I'll tell you, I'll say it in the sense of the process of doing it, like, in chronological order kind of thing. So yeah, and let's just start now. Okay, so before the papers, like before the time starts, you'll be sitting there and staring at the front page, like you haven't seen it before in your life or something. You'll be staring at the page, right? So at that point of time, what you do, you calm yourself down. You try not to be panic. Like just don't keep any weird thoughts in your mind. And the other thing that you can do is to remember your time management strategy, like what I was talking about last week. The simple one is the 30-30-30 kind of thing. But here's a more sensible one, I think. Uh, I think you can adjust it according to your needs. So I'm gonna tell you one now. So you need about 5 minutes to read the passage properly. No skimming over the passage, don't do that. Skimming over the passage doesn't work. So just read it properly the first time round, and yeah, and I'll tell you what you're supposed to do when you're reading the passage later on. So after you read the passage, you will spend maybe 20 to 25 minutes on your short answer questions. And after that, you can spend 20 minutes on your summary, because summary shouldn't take too long. And after that, you should spend about 35 minutes on your AQ, or whatever remainder time you have. If you have 40 minutes, that's really good. And once you're done with everything, you have about 5 minutes or slightly less than 5 minutes for checking. So when the time starts, well, what do you do? Before you even read the passage, you first quickly take a glance at the AQ question and you write down the main part of the question on top of your passage, the space on top. Because you are not gonna hand in the insert anyways, so just write it there in the insert. You can use your pencil. And also take note of the summary questions. Take note of what it's asking for. Because if you think about it, the stuff asked in summary is usually distinct from the stuff that's in the short answer questions. So if you already know which part is meant for the summary, you don't need to go and look at that part when you're answering your short answer questions. Yeah, so yeah, you can for example, if it says paragraph 4 to paragraph 8, maybe then you can draw a huge square bracket for paragraph 4 to 8. And if you are even faster, or if you really need to do it, you can even start underlining points while you're reading the passage. So just make sure to read the passage properly, and as you're reading the passage, if there's any point that relate to the AQ that you really want to use, then just underline it first, so that you don't have to search for it later. So after reading the passage, you move on to the SAQ. So the SAQ, yeah, as I said earlier, last time, you should know what kind of question it is. So like for example, the literal question, you follow the required strategy for that question in the sense. So you just you look at the question, find out what kind of question it is, and then follow the strategy and answer it quickly. Don't waste too much time on the question, because as I said, no, as I didn't say, but as you know that there isn't that much time to do the section, and sometimes you would need more time for other questions. So if you can try to spend the least amount of time as you can for each question. So and in order to do that, if you look at the question and you first, usually when you see the question, you know where it's supposed to come from, and you immediately will go find it in the passage. But if that thought doesn't happen to you, then don't try the question first. If you actually have a general idea, then you write down the answer. If you really don't have an answer, then just leave it blank first and come back to it later. And I think you've heard this from your teachers, but for each mark, you may require up to 2 points. So like for a 3-mark question, you may need for at least 5 points or even 6 points. And this is usually when you're writing literal or inference questions, and you know the questions where you need purpose and context. Even if it's 1 mark, you need both in order to get that 1 mark, or if it's 2 marks, you may need both in order to get the 2 marks, otherwise you get 0 marks. So do take note of this, of the certain ways that the question can be marked in a sense, and don't miss out points in a sense. If you're able to find a point, just write it in. It's not summary. You don't have a word limit. Of course you have a space limit, so if you are writing too much, you will know for sure. Of course, the next thing is you generally need to write in your own words, as it is mentioned at the top of the before all the questions. If the question specifically says write in your own words, then you definitely must do it. But if you, for the other questions, if you really do not know how to paraphrase it, then you can use some of the words just at your own risk. Your language marks may not be super good, but at least you won't get the question wrong. So yeah, so in other words, if you have problems paraphrasing the words, don't change the word that you have doubts with. Just change the one that you're definitely sure that you can substitute it and you'll be good. And since this is the SAQ and not the summary, you can substitute it for a longer phrase if needed. Yeah. So as I said earlier, the 25 minutes for SAQ, if 25 minutes has passed, just move on. Don't stay there longer. Because when you do that, you will tend to spend an arbitrarily long time on that section, and you may not have enough time to do the other segments and get super low marks. And that will be even more detrimental than losing marks by not answering 1 or 2 questions. Okay, so now let's move on to the summary. Of course, if you're the person who likes to underline your points right away, then you can just start paraphrasing them. If not, just go and quickly underline all the points and then find them quickly. And in this case, summary, quantity can help. Of course, you must also take note of the quality of your points, but quantity can help because if you properly paraphrase them, you can get your 8 marks pretty easily. You need 15 to 16 points, and by points I don't mean sentences. A point can be as short as 2 words. So yeah, you just underline as much as you can. Even if you don't know how many points it is, just underline the parts which make sense to the question and just put it in. And just hope that you get 15 to 16 points. If you're actually able to tell which is a point, the individual point, then try to find at least 20 points to put in. And if there really aren't 20 points and you just can't see it, then don't worry about it. Put whatever you can. And of course, I said you can put whatever you can, but make sure those things are actually points and not like examples, not useless information that is useless, not relevant to the question. Put actual relevant stuff in the passage, in the summary. Of course, the only exception is, as I said earlier, if there really isn't enough points, then maybe the examples may be one of the point. It could be a point as well. And if you don't know how to find examples or extra useless information, then look out for the dashes and the commas. Yeah, that's a good place to start to figure out whether it's needed in the summary or not. And of course, the summary has a word limit, and if you write too little, you must try to find 1 or 2 more sentences. If it means you don't have enough points or you over paraphrased it and it looks messed up. So either fix your paraphrasing or you find more sentence, 4 points. If it is too much, cancel out the points that you feel you didn't paraphrase correctly or you feel is least relevant or takes up too much word space. That will, because technically you would have had enough points anyway, so unless your points are all paraphrased wrongly, then I can't help you. Okay. But the point is, just take the point that seemed the least useful to your summary, in a sense. Okay. The least likely to get marks for you. And yes, when paraphrasing, you may sometimes use longer phrases than the actual sentence. You can do it for maybe 1 or 2 points, but please don't do it for everything. You're gonna exceed the word count tremendously. So don't do that. Instead, what you can do is you can connect 2 to 3 points in one sentence. If, for example, they're very related, like if they can be put together like a little list, then you can just do that and connect them in a sentence. And you can save repeating subject words like the nouns. Like, for example, he did this, he did that. Instead of saying that, you can say he did this and that. Of course, since if you have more than 2 things, then you can save even more words. He did this, and this. So yeah, if you can use commas instead of and, then go for it. And of course, don't overthink whether your point is relevant or not. If you actually are in such a situation, don't take too long to think about it, because you shouldn't be spending more than 20 minutes to 30 minutes on your summary. So please finish it within that time and then move on to the AQ. And of course, some people need to write a draft, but what I usually do is I write it in pencil, and I write it in pen again. But in the exam, I just write it directly in pen, because honestly, I'm not going to change it that much. Yeah, so just your own way of doing it. Just make sure it's neat. Don't make it a big mess. Okay, so finally you go on to the AQ, and you hopefully have enough time. So I said the more time you have, the better. Having more time allows you to calm down and also flesh out your points better. And if by this point you have a headache, and I think that is very likely, drink some water. Take a small pause. Just take a deep breath. Breathe in and breathe out. You can do that. There's enough time to do that kind of thing. It's okay. Just drink water if you need to. It helps. Seriously, I'm not kidding you. So once you're done with that, just do a small stretch and then move on and quickly write the intro and how much you agree or disagree, because by now you would know. I think you would know how much you agree or disagree, especially if you already have your points ready. You can just put them in one by one. So please do remember to cite which line it comes from. I think that's pretty important. Yeah. And yeah, so basically, for example, I mostly agree with the author's points, blah blah blah, and then you can say the author said this from this line, which means this, and explain the point, and then you say your opinion on the point and things like that. Yeah. So of course the question asks your society, so please be super clear that his points are mostly applicable to Singapore. Please say Singapore. Or if you're talking about China or India, say that. Don't just leave it. Don't just say my society. You must mention the country. Yeah. Okay. So I'll just move on. Okay, so and then after you talk about your point, you would have some examples. Like, you will definitely be using some personal examples, because this is not your paper one. So you can actually use stuff that you saw. Even if you didn't actually see it, you can just say, I saw this. I observed that this is the case. Yeah, you can use that. You can say what you personally do or what your friends do or something like that, but don't use too many of them. You can use 1 or 2 at least. You can use them. You must definitely use at least 1 or 2, but don't overuse it. That's all. And make sure that they're actually relevant to the point. Don't just include it for the sake of including it, or just because you don't have enough examples. And there's a reason why you must read the news. Yeah, they must be relevant and not too stereotypical or too all-encompassing. Like, for example, if you do mention some kind of stereotypical thing, you must give some kind of balance to it. Say that this doesn't apply to everyone, or for the most part only, or something like that. Like, only some people exhibit these behaviors, in the sense. And in general, you would mention a particular age group. For example, like the youngsters, the youth, and the elderly or middle age or something like that. You may actually end up saying something of that sort. so that you can give a bit more nuanced as to who exactly the thing applies to, because it may apply to maybe the youth but not to the adults, or it may apply to adults but not to youth, or something like that. So do mention that balance in terms of the point. And also do include the real stuff like news or government opinions, or what the government has done as well, or societal opinions as well, because the point is, this is not just about your views, and also but it's also related to your society, so you must include what happens, what is definitely the case in society, and some news as well. So yeah, so before you even start, please read the question carefully. The AQ isn't the exact same every time. I do remember that in 2018, our A level question was very unusual. Okay, not very, but it was a bit unusual. It wasn't like what I remembered reading the question to be. So when you look at the 2018 question, I hope you understand what I mean. So it's a bit unusual. And if it is a question that's a bit different from the usual kind, just don't worry about it. Don't worry that the answer doesn't follow the usual style. Just be confident. Just make sure that you answer the question. The important thing is to answer the question and not to follow the thing that don't not exactly following the exact template that you learn, but more of answering the question. In other words, what I meant was you had to answer the question instead of blindly writing the exact same style of writing that you've done for each and every exam. In the sense, okay. And the final point, I know your teachers may say, oh, you should write 3 points, but it is okay to have only 2 points. I'm pretty sure a lot of people only wrote 2 points, even in their A levels. If the points are coherent, nuanced, and well explained, then you're set. You don't need to worry about having a third point. Don't fret over it. If you don't have a lot of time, just improve your 2 points. But if you feel that your third point makes the discussion more complete, or you really have this urge to include a third point, then go ahead and add it in pertaining to how much time you have left. Yeah. And after doing the paper, what's the last thing you do? Check, of course, not sleep. Don't sleep. Don't sleep yet. First check. So when you're checking, what do? You first check whether you left anything blank, like your SAQ. Fill up any blanks if you have time. Especially if you have like 10 minutes, you can go fill up those questions. Also, make sure your word count is actually written there. Don't just assume that you wrote your word count. Please do count your words and write it down. And if you are the kind who needs to read over your answers, you can do that. But usually, what I end up doing is I realize I'm not going to change my answer, so it doesn't really help. But instead, what I like to do is fix up my handwriting a bit, so you can fix up your illegible handwriting. For example, if your A looks like a U, you can make it back into an A for that matter. So just do that. And if you're done checking and you have nothing else to do, you're feeling confident, then just relax. I mean, if you only have 1 minute left, just sit there, stare at the front, and then don't know what you do. Flip it back to the cover page and then just keep it neatly on one side. And if you want to pack your stuff, you can pack it. Yeah. So that's basically that for this particular episode. I think this is pretty comprehensive. If you found this useful, you can press the like button and subscribe. And the next and final video, we will talk about what happens after your paper 2. Yes, my voice is starting to get hoarse. I'd like to say thank you and bye.